Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Career Choice Series webinar on food, drug, and biotech law. The Career Choice Series is designed to help you choose your career path. Whether you're a law student, young lawyer, or transitioning attorney, find out what it's like to work in various practice areas and the best way to position yourself to get there. The Career Choice Series is brought to you today by ABA Legal Career Central, Law Student Division, Young Lawyers Division, and the Section of Administrative Law and Regulatory Practice. The ABA section of Administrative Law and Regulatory Practice is an important actual and virtual gathering place for lawyers practicing in every sector and serving in government, private practice, and academia who seek to explain and improve the functioning of administrative agencies to serve the public well. The Young Lawyers Division is here to help new lawyers navigate the early years of their career and law students prepare for life after law school. The Law Students Division offers premium benefits, which includes a savings of $250 on Barbary Bar Review, $25 off West academic casebooks, and a legal ethics bundle that includes a free Model Rules of Professional Conduct ebook. Upgrade to premium for $25. Sign up today at abaforlawstudents.com/go premium. ABA Legal Career Central is a career center that offers both career development resources and a job board for law students, lawyers, and other legal professionals across all disciplines and career stages. Today's moderator is Liz Stone, Managing Director of the Dubin Group, a legal search firm based in the Bay Area. She's a former litigator and currently performs stand-up comedy at clubs throughout the country. She is a board member of ABA Legal Career Central. Liz, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Emily. I'm really excited about our program today, and I'd like to introduce our panelists to you. First, I am pleased to introduce Edgar Asebey, who is an FDA attorney and a partner at Keller Asebey Life Science Law. Edgar has a background in molecular biology and has worked as a patent and licensing specialist. He represents clients in all the life sciences, including food, drug, cosmetics, and medical devices, and assists clients with complex FDA compliance matters. He also assists clients with M&A, venture finance, IP licensing, and transactional matters. We also have Professor James O'Reilly, who was Associate General Counsel at Procter Gamble for 24 years. Jim worked to ensure the company's products were FDA compliant, and he worked with Congress to create drug and medical device legislation. His book was cited by the U.S. Supreme Court as the expert on FDA law, and he has also taught several courses at the University of Cincinnati College of Law as well as the College of Medicine. Welcome, Edgar and Jim. We are so happy to have you guys here. I'd like to start by hearing about an overview of your practice. And Edgar, I will start with you. Can you tell us about your work?
Yes, currently my practice, well, first of all, thank you. And thank you for inviting me to share my experiences here with emerging younger lawyers. My practice is basically, as you mentioned in the intro, a pretty varied practice. I've been at this about almost 20 years now, and it goes across the areas that FDA regulates. So essentially, there's if you think of two Venn diagrams, one being the different categories that are regulated by FDA, whether it's foods, drugs, cosmetics, medical devices, dietary supplements, new dietary ingredients, all of those things. I participate in supporting clients in obtaining either approvals or clearances. And then on the enforcement side, I help defend companies before the FDA, USDA, EPA with regards to the same regulated products. So enforcement actions, 483s, things of that sort, GMP noncompliance. And then the second Venn diagram is I do this not just in the U.S., but with international clients. I'd say about 80% of my clients are outside of the United States, and oftentimes they can be big pharmaceutical companies, or they can be small entrepreneurs trying to break into the U.S. market, and I guide them through the maze of FDA regulations.
Great, thank you. And Jim, could you give us an overview of your work?
I've been keeping students awake for almost 40 years. When I took this course in food and drug law, it was just because I liked the professor as a person. I didn't know anything about food and drug law, and the first day he said, relax, You've eaten food, you've taken pharmaceuticals. This is something that's going to be important to you for the rest of your lives. And even if you don't like food and drug law, you'll like food, you'll like pharmaceuticals, and so stay in. He was my mentor, and he went on to become chief counsel of the FDA, and then later the dean of the University of Virginia, where I was in law school. Richard Merrill then co-authored the case book that everyone uses. Merrill was a good example of a person who had an interest in the public side of things as well as the private side. In my case, starting out at Procter Gamble after being one of his students, getting into the Procter Gamble business was very interesting because they had foods and drugs and medical devices and a variety of other things. And so I got a very interesting mix of projects and people to work with and the like, got involved in trade associations, got involved in legislation and the like. And today when I see job postings, I often see job postings for entry-level people in drug companies, food companies, and the like. And I encourage you to think about whether you'd want to take something like that as an entry, or whether you're more made up for the big law firm type thing where you're going to be in the FDA department, or whether you want to be in a smaller city and be the FDA expert in that city.
Great, thank you. Now, you've touched on it a bit in the overview of your practice, but Jim, could you give us a bit more detail on both your career path and also the key to breaking into this area for people who are interested in it?
You have to find the spark that someone else has and build upon that spark by saying, gee, when I grow up, I want to be like that person. It's very interesting that in the food and drug field, we have no gender barriers, no age barriers, no ethnicity barriers. We have a very open field. You just have to be very good at oral explanations of complex issues. It helps to have some science, but our principal goal is to say to you, you can be very good in the food and drug law field by working really, really hard and really, really smart.
Thank you. Edgar, can you talk us through your career path a bit, how you got to where you are today doing the work that you do?
I'd be happy to. I first have to give a little caveat and say you shouldn't necessarily try this at home. I've had a very kind of a non-typical career path. Not that getting into FDA regulatory law, we find a lot of people have come from other disciplines. I started off, I studied molecular biology in college at the University of Chicago and spent a good time in the laboratory splicing genes and in my early college career, and then went to medical school and did the same thing. I finished 2 years of medical school before I realized that wasn't for me, and that's when I moved from Chicago to Washington, D.C. to attend law school, but with the idea of becoming a patent attorney. So I worked at the National Cancer Institute at NIH as a patent and licensing advisor while going to law school at night. After that, I was supposed to, again, become a patent attorney and had a nice career in Washington, D.C., but instead of that, one of the scientists from the NCI and I left and started a biotech company, which I ran for about 7 years. So that's a very non-typical career path, but the comment I want to make about that is that I gained subject matter expertise in something in a very specific area, which is in the drug development area, and also in the licensing and tech transfer area. So when I decided, after I left the company and I started practicing in this area, I had tools that were very valuable to me, and I came in at a relatively senior position at a law firm just because I was able to leverage that subject matter expertise. So I then moved down to Florida. I left Washington, D.C., and I think that's one of the messages I want to convey here is that, yes, the majority of FDA attorneys are in D.C., but you can have a very vibrant practice outside of D.C. also. I've been in South Florida for 12 years now, built practices at different medium-sized law firms, and then about 3 years ago was recruited by a very large international sort of a top-tier law firm, Jones Day, and joined their life sciences group. And that was a great experience for me. And just in the past year, I've gone off and with a small group of attorneys started a boutique life sciences law firm. So I've been at large firms, small firms, etc. But I think the message is not that you should copy my career path, but that it's important to get some subject matter expertise to distinguish yourself and get some traction at the beginning of your career.
Great, very helpful. Thank you so much. Now let's hear about what a day in your lives are like. Edgar, I will start with you. Can you tell us about a day in the life doing the work that you do?
Sure. A day, usually I'll come into the office, and I usually have some regulations that I need to read. I have to review. As you know, we have thousands of pages of regulations, and these are constantly changing. So I have clients that constantly are, looking for the proper way to comply with possibly novel products, novel pharmaceuticals, or a new dietary ingredient. So one of the things that I do regularly is I have to go back and look at the specifics of the CFR. So that's always something that I'm constantly back at the CFR every day. And then I'm writing complex opinions, weaving together different portions of the CFR and the innovative technologies that are being developed. So if it's an in vitro diagnostic or a new dietary ingredient, or I'm helping some company design clinical trials, then I'm looking either at scientific texts or reading scientific papers, or looking at the CFR and seeing what the parameters for my client to operate would be. And then the other part is actually advising clients on fast-moving issues. For example, I have a lot of companies that are entrepreneurial companies that are developing new products, and I sit on a couple of boards of those companies and on also committees where I can advise them on an ongoing basis. And so it's quite varied. It has to do a lot with technical regulatory work at my desk, but it also involves advising companies at different levels, both on the technical side and sometimes on if there's an acquisition or a merger being contemplated, more on the finance side. So it's pretty broad. It isn't one thing all the time.
Great. Sounds like a good mix. And Jim, I'd like to hear about a day in your life. And I know you're teaching now and you've written books, but if you could focus a bit more on your general counsel work, that would be really helpful, and just hear about a day in your life when you were practicing at Procter Gamble.
I used to say to people, you haven't gotten into enough trouble to meet me yet. Because a lot of what you do in food and drug practice is responding to the crisis of the day or the urgency of the day. In a company that had 110,000 employees, 185 brands, and operated in probably 130 countries, there was always something coming up in the food and drug law field that was interesting. For me, I could handle crises very well, but I really enjoyed the sustaining effort to craft legislation or to comment on regulations or to assist the FDA to see things in a different way. For me, the regulatory system was a great place to be as a young lawyer, because you could make your way through this complexity and help your clients to see their way through. And as I did that, of course, I was learning constantly. Being able to learn, even with crisis and the phone calls and the travel and the congressional testimony and everything, even with that, you learn constantly and be willing to learn constantly that not everything you assumed is correct. So be ready to change, be ready to grow. Back to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Jim. And now I'd like to hear a little bit about the pros and cons of your work. Jim, I'll start with you. Can you give us some of your favorite things about your work and some of the challenges that you face?
I loved talking to my children about what I did because my children could relate to food. And I could say to them, we're helping to keep your product, Pringles, safe. And we're helping people who want to have a safer product, like Pampers, for example. I wanted to help to keep that safer, and I wanted to work with the next level of pharmaceuticals so that the diagnostic and the treatment aspects would be significantly better. In each of those steps, it was easy to explain what I wanted to do for the benefit of people, and that's what I loved. I was doing something relative rather than just another mortgage or just another lien or just another domestic relations issue. I was doing something that would have an impact on people I'd never meet, but I knew they would be safer as a result of what I did.
Great. And what's the challenge that you faced in your work?
Clients that assumed that they knew enough about the regulatory system that they could make decisions which were totally wrong, but which they thought were very plausible. And at one point, the CEO of the company fired the executive vice president of the company for making a significant mistake. And the words were, "How in the hell did I come eyeball to eyeball with the biggest regulator in the world and me not know about it?" And that was a message, because it was so quiet at that point, you could hear the for sale sign going up in front of the executive vice president. So learn about that, and learn about the opportunities you have as a lawyer to be aware of the risk and to guide your clients carefully through those risks. That's key.
Great. And Edgar, can you talk about the pros and cons of your work?
Yes, again, putting it into the context that I'm outside of D.C. and many years ago, and I should point out, on Professor O'Reilly's advice, I dedicated my FDA practice more on an international to an international clientele, and one of the decisions for moving down to Florida was precisely to do that. What it's given me an opportunity to do is to really have an international practice. So, you know, I don't necessarily do international law, the type of things that we think of when it's international law, but I'm speaking to you right now from Havana, Cuba, and in the past 3 weeks I've been in Dominican Republic, in 3 cities in Colombia, and I won't be back to the U.S. until Monday. So that's one wonderful aspect of my practice. The other part is that I get to meet brilliant people, brilliant scientists, brilliant entrepreneurs, people that are really moving forward and have very stimulating sort of energies, and my practice is always dealing with new and fresh ideas. So by virtue of being a regulatory lawyer, and companies coming up with innovations and bringing challenging regulatory questions to me, I get to be in that milieu. So that's really a wonderful aspect of regulatory practice. It's not just reading the CFR like I mentioned before, but it's interfacing with very interesting people who are innovative, and that part of the practice is very nice. I'd say the downside to, yes, Jim, you wanted to say something?
You'll never see 2 days exactly alike.
Correct. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Every day's a new, wonderful challenge, you know, and that keeps it very interesting, never gets stale. And some of the challenges that I face are, because I chose not to be in Washington, D.C., I get more limited contact with my colleagues in what I call the FDA bar. There isn't an official FDA bar. We all meet at ABA meetings or at FIDLI meetings, but so nowadays it's much easier because of communications and things of that sort. But I think that's one downside. The other downside is, just like Jim mentioned, I think I have to reiterate, you know, being diplomatic enough to know that when a CEO is pushing back hard, there's only so much you're going to be able to do. But at the same time, being the regulatory lawyer who is the person that might be the linchpin for a very important decision, being able to speak up and then sometimes watch your client go down a wrong road. This has happened to me many times, and I've had clients come back to me after they've tried it a different way. And so that part's a little painful to watch sometimes, but it's something you manage, and it's more human relationships.
Got it. Now, Edgar, what would you say are the top 3 skills to succeed in your practice area?
Well, I think one, and these are in no particular order, but I would say that you have to be realistic about your ability to sit and read regulations and interpret regulations and be able to play with the interface of different regulations and different innovative ideas. At least in my practice, if I weren't able to sit down and actually, you know, I'm not going to say enjoy, but at least have an interest in what those impacts are, regulatory impacts. Whenever, you know, there's a new rule coming out on, like for example, on the Food Safety Modernization Act, I'm, you know, chomping at the bit till the rule comes out, because I know it's going to have a real impact on my clients. So number one is that ability, that real assessment is, can I sit there and really deal with these technical regulations? And number two, and I have to say, it's a pleasure for me to be on this call with Professor O'Reilly. He's my mentor. He's been my mentor for the past, 15 years. And I would say to everyone on the call, find a good mentor, somebody who's going to help you answer the questions. When I was a younger lawyer, I was calling Jim all the time. And I would tell people, I never get the answer wrong because I have Jim O'Reilly's phone number. And so that's a big piece of advice from me that really that's important, to find someone you can really learn from. And then I think another skill would be to really find some subject matter expertise. FDA regulatory law is very broad. It even includes tobacco these days, and it goes from very scientific and technical to advertising and things of that sort. So decide what areas you really want to get under your belt first, and dedicate yourself to those. And then another thing that's helped me is that I'm originally from South America, so I speak a second language. I believe I'm one of the few FDA attorneys who does work in Latin America at a certain level, and so I don't have a lot of competition. So again, creating a niche for yourself down the road by becoming a subject matter expertise or having a second language, things of that sort, I think helps your career greatly.
Great. And Jim, could you talk about what you view the top 3 skills for someone to practice in this area?
Be a good listener first. It makes a huge difference in the allegiance and loyalty of your clients. Be a good listener. Second, recognize when someone is going off on the wrong path and gently and diplomatically bring them back. You're not going to stop every mistake the client's going to make, but you can be a very constructive and diplomatic person to bring them back on the right path. And third, you've got to have the writing ability. This is not a field where you can get by without being able to write, because persuasive use of precedent is absolutely essential to building a rock-solid case that the FDA General Counsel's office will agree with, and the courts will agree with.
Great, thank you. Now, Jim, what would people be surprised to know about working in FDA law?
It's not as obvious as you might think that advertising is so simple. It's so easy to do. Each of those crazy claims that you see on TV, each of those very legitimate claims, all those legitimate claims you see, those are thoroughly vetted by the FDA lawyer before the pharmaceutical ad goes out, before the food benefit ad is out. And that if you see an off-the-wall claim, the company probably is pulling it out of its pocket and not being able to use the benefit of lawyers, particularly the late-night cable ads for dietary supplements. They're not using good lawyers, and you're going to see the Federal Trade Commission or the FDA jump on their case.
Interesting. Edgar, what would you say people would be surprised to know about your work?
Well, about my particular practice, I think I know more about cosmetics than anyone I know these days, and I know it in a couple of languages. I don't use very many, hardly any. Maybe some
and it shows.
But I can tell you I'm very familiar with all the ingredients and all the pigments and all the specific rules and the size of the type, things of that sort, because I'm constantly advising companies, and so I kind of know those regs like the back of my hand. Another thing that I think you'd be surprised to know is that people, when I'm, down in Florida or traveling either in Europe or in South America on client matters, they're surprised that I'm not in D.C. And so another thing is, again, going back to the point I made before, that while D.C. is an amazing place to practice law and especially regulatory law for all the obvious reasons, I have a vibrant career and not in D.C. in a state that people don't connect with either technology or things of that sort. So I think my message is that you can be a good FDA lawyer if you're dedicated to it anywhere in the United States.
Thank you. Now, Edgar, can you tell us about how ABA involvement has boosted your career?
Yes, one of the, and again, when I was a young lawyer, Professor O'Reilly is the one who told me, come join me at this ABA meeting in Chicago. I remember the first one, Jim. And I got connected to so many people, and then I started writing articles and got publications and bought reference materials that were instrumental to my success in practical ways as a practicing attorney. So I'd say the biggest advantages to me has been networking and meeting people that have the niche practices that I was early on trying to develop myself. And they've become long-lasting friends and colleagues over the years and decades now. And number two, great source of just learning, a source of, I remember I joined a international trade and customs law firm, an international firm with offices around the world, and I was an FDA lawyer, didn't know much about customs. I picked up a book on customs regulation at the ABA. I think it was half price or something. It was the last day. And that was my best reference book for years when I had to survive at an international trade and customs firm. So the learning opportunities of attending the conferences, the networking and meeting colleagues that can be helpful to you, sources of referrals in the future, and also the publications that the ABA does are invaluable to someone in a regulatory practice.
Excellent, thank you. And Jim, how about you? Can you tell us a bit about how ABA involvement has helped you out?
It's been amazing. I've been a chair of the section of administrative law. I've been on special committees. I've been on 2 presidential commissions. I've worked very hard behind the scenes on some of the ABA projects that have been reflected in Congress. But the ABA involvement most has exposed me to a level of quality of the people who are doing the things that I aspire to do, that I said, I want to be as good as that person or this person. One particular room keeps coming to mind with about 30 people in it and a podium up front, and Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer's at it, and Steve's reading his paper, and Steve says, all of us in the administrative law field who are working with the thought leaders and all, he stopped and said, oh, wait a minute, that's us. Thought leaders, that's us. And we all laughed. But actually, the ABA is going to bring together the thought leaders, the people who are going to work on tomorrow's concepts, tomorrow's legislation, regulations, and you're going to learn from those people how to do it right and how to do it in an affirmative, diplomatic way that's going to make a difference in your career.
Great. Now we have a few questions from the audience that I'd like to touch on, and one question is about how a new attorney looking to get an entry-level position, what they can do, and obviously we've touched on how useful the ABA is for networking, but in addition to just online job postings, do either of you have any recommendations for someone trying to get a job in this area?
I have 2. One is usajobs.gov. There will be federal government jobs after the freeze is off, and there will be interesting jobs. The FDA has 2 classes segregated. One is the FDA General Counsel's Office, which are the premier jobs. The lesser are the Regulatory Counsel, COUNSCL, who advise the actual people writing the regulations. So FDA's postings, when they're there, will be on usajobs.gov. In the private sector, go to the web and find Smart Brief, all one word, Smart Brief, and then look at the Food and Drug Law Institute's columns on there, or the web's blogs, and each week there are jobs listed for entry-level attorneys in the food and drug law field. You may not want a particular job, you may not want the particular company, but it is interesting to know that Smart Brief for FDA is going to list these jobs every week, and one might come along that you're interested in.
Thank you. Edgar, do you have anything to add to that?
I do. And like Jim said, you know, and I think in general, I think starting off at in the federal government is a great option for a young attorney. I did that. I didn't go to the FDA. I went to the National Cancer Institute at NIH, and gained even more subject matter expertise. So I think that in general, starting off in the government gives you an insight that is going to be invaluable to your practice in the future. And then the second thing is related to what Jim said. FDLI, the Food and Drug Law Institute's Smart Brief, is I agree, a great source of constant job postings in the FDA area, but also go to the ABA meetings and meet people in regulatory law, have some FaceTime with them, and then go to the FDLI, the Food and Drug Law Institute annual meetings, and get some FaceTime with FDA lawyers, because they'll remember you and you can engage in conversations and possibly open up opportunities. And in my years, when I've had to look for jobs, it's always been more successful to have FaceTime and have someone talk to you than just sending the resumes. I think it's 50 times more effective when you're in front of someone.
Yeah, definitely.
So please join us.
I agree with that.
I'm the chair of the ABA's Food and Drug Committee. I encourage you to come to the Administrative Law Section's October meeting, meet the people in our Food and Drug Committee, and look at the jobs options there.
Great, thank you guys. And one more question that I think will be helpful. I've got some questions about the best way to gain the substantive knowledge that is needed to differentiate yourself while trying to break into this field. And, you know, we've talked about the ABA and how that is a great place to learn some specifics. And Edgar, I know you referenced some training materials. Jim, I'll start with you. Do you have anything to add for people trying to get up to speed on substantive knowledge that would be helpful to get into this practice area?
Yes. Go to your law school's librarian and say you want to get O'Reilly's 3-volume FDA treatise, and if they don't have it, have them get it on interlibrary loan, because the treatise has so much detail, so much background. You can take what you want from it and become a subject matter expert that way.
And that is approved by the Supreme Court as the expert, right?
Yes.
All right, that's definitely a good one. Supreme Court recognizes it as the expert material. And Edgar, do you have anything to add to that?
I certainly do, and I can tell it to you from my own experience. Professor O'Reilly gave me a copy. It used to be a 2-volume set back in the day when I started, and that was my main reference for any questions I had in areas that I at the time did not practice in. I could learn from them and look up anything I needed. And if not, I had the luck of having Jim's phone number. But everybody can have access to his treatise. And that really is the way it's written. The way it's written is a way that really is very understandable and breaks down the really technical areas into things that are much more manageable. And I'd say, like Jim said, you have to have a treatise like that at hand, or else you'll be lost as a beginning FDA lawyer.
Great. Well, thank you both so much for your time. We really appreciate you having you here. This was so helpful and informative. So thanks again. And Emily, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you, Professor O'Reilly and Edgar, for your illuminating discussion on what it's like to be FDA lawyers. And thank you all for attending today's program. Please be sure to check out our website at abalcc.org for upcoming free career-related articles and webinars. Recordings of past programs are on our website now, and on your screen are some of our upcoming Career Choice Series webinars and some upcoming Career Advice Series webinars. Be sure to check them out. You can connect with us on social media and go to our About page to learn more about our board members. Please complete our short survey before leaving, and thank you again, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hasta la vista. Hasta la vista.